All right, good morning and welcome everybody. This is session 1 of Data Camp. We have Christie Ussery, who is the testing center lead here at Montgomery campus. And her presentation is going to be covering transitioning testing services to virtual, how we rearranged our testing center to meet student and campus needs. Christie, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. So as Dallas has mentioned, I'm Christie Ussery, the specialist for the Montgomery Testing Center, and we are going to go over my presentation today. So first off, if you have any questions during the presentation, please just enter them in the Q&A section, and then at the end of the presentation, I have reserved some time where we can be able to discuss it and go over it. So please enter all your questions in there, and during it, just please make sure you're on mute and your video is off for bandwidth purposes. I want to thank everybody for being here, and we will get started. So in my presentation today, we are going to do 3 points of focus. My first point is going to be the problem. We needed to identify the problem so we can be able to understand how we can create the solutions to the problem and be able to transition into a virtual world. And then at the end, I'll be able to show you the data that was collected on the test that we did during this period of time. And as you can see, this picture here is the actual testing center room. So my first point of focus is the problem, which I like to call it as a solution opportunity. So the first problem we came across was the email system. We started getting a ton of emails when we had to shut down the testing center, because as you all know, 2020 was crazy time. We were not able to come back to campus because things were just starting to gradually close down, couldn't get access to anything. And a lot of the emails were coming in and just like wanting to find out, when are we going to open up? When are we going to start testing? We had a lot of frustrated students, frustrated parents, frustrated coworkers, and we were getting 20 to 30 emails a day, and nobody knew how to access them. We just could not get to them in an orderly fashion time. And another issue that we had a lot of was our technology. Not just with the staff not having the technology to use the equipment to be able to give testing, but also a lot of our students didn't have the technology they needed on their side. They were used to coming into a testing center campus when we have 40 computers that they can easily use with the internet, and they didn't have that capability at home, or they didn't even own their own laptop. So between the emails and technology, it was a huge issue, which led to our customer service issue, because we weren't able to get to the students on time and everything coming in so much that I felt like our customers, because of that, because we were getting information in pretty much every single day saying we can do this or we couldn't do that. We can get on campus or we couldn't, or we could get on campus. So there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of issues with customer service, and we didn't know what to do. So we didn't know how to help the students to do. So we also had a lot of testing coming in, which we had TSI tests that needed to be taken care of in order for the students to get into college and register for the semester. We had PSB, HESI, and ATI testing that was due, that we had to figure out how to do it. And we also had to figure out whether or not the companies would allow us to do it virtually, and then we had to figure out how they would allow that process. So there was a lot of back and forth with the companies, with the testing, with the emails, and then we had to be trained on them. We had to figure out what we needed to do and which area we need to train in, because we came from a completely walk in, get your test done, you move on, and we had to figure out how to do all that virtually, which none of us have done virtually up to this point, because it's just easy to do it in person. And so there was WebExes that had to be done, and trained on. There was Zoom had to be done, and then we were told we couldn't use Zoom, so then we had to go back to WebEx. Then we had to train on how to even administer the test, because the same year in January, our coordinator, which is the position I'm in now, she retired, and she took a lot of that knowledge with her on how to administer some of the testing. So we didn't even know how to administer the test in person, let alone virtually. So as you can see, we came up with a lot of solution opportunities that we needed to start figuring out how to start getting this done and do it in a manner where we not only help less the stress with our proctors and our employees, but also the stress with our students, and just give good customer service in the process of all of that. So it went to our solution. So a big part of our solution was the employees here in the testing center. Every single employee was willing and able to just jump in and help out. We all got together on a WebEx meeting, and we all just brainstormed on how we can help the students go to the next level. Some of the employees were jumping on the WebEx. They're like, I'll take care of the WebEx situation. I'll train on it. I'll troubleshoot it. I'll train other proctors on it. So they were able to come up with a system that worked for the WebEx training. And then we had some employees that couldn't access any of the virtual stuff like that, but they can take care of the email system. So we started from that brainstorming, started to create different teams. We had one team for the virtual testing for the TSI. We had one team that started working on how ATI testing works, how the PSB testing works, how the HESI testing works. It's just once we started getting all our different teams in place, we were able to say, okay, this is now going to be our process on how we're going to be able to make everything work. And then we had, once we created those teams, the employees weren't limited to those teams. They were willing, if they had already processed or taken care of whatever they needed to take care of for the day, they were willing to jump over and help out this team so that way they can get caught up. And at the time, we only had one full-time employee that was fixing to take a month-long vacation. So our part-time employees had to step up and start taking over some of her processes that she was doing virtually. And thankfully, they started allowing us to have 40 hours a week. So we had about 9 part-time proctors working 40 hours a week, just in order to start getting these students taken care of, figuring out how these tests were run. And so we really had to create systems in each particular area in order for us to be able to make this process flow work. So our director, she created a form stack, which is a form that collects all the information of the students online. And we were able to collect all that information in one place instead of just having them, oh, this information's here, this information's here. So we would direct all of the students to go to this form stack and fill it out, upload the receipt, and then we can process them the way that we knew that they needed to go and how they would work. So we had 2 different teams that were actually assigned to the form stack. One team worked in the morning, one team worked in the afternoon. So that way, if we had a late night person fill it out or a morning time fill it out, we had the entire form stack process covered. Then we started creating systems. Of course, we had to take it down to the basics. Like the first system we had to create after the form stack was the emails. We had 20 to 30 emails coming in, and we just had to figure out how to answer these students, and we wanted to give them all the exact same information, so that way we knew the process that we had sent them to. So we started creating different templates for our email systems to say, okay, the student needs to go through the form stack. So we had an email template that we sent out to the students in order for directions to go to the form stack. And then we had directions if they needed to go and take a HESI test or directions for ATI and PSB. And we actually had to create a different separate email address in order to separate the two emails, because it just got too much for one email address to have. And we had a lot of dual credit students coming in to take the TSIs, and those alone, we were getting 50 to 60 a day. And so we had a team that was just on that new email address that took care of all the ATIs, PSBs, TSIs, and everything like that. Because, like I said, the emails were just sometimes a little overwhelming. But then we broke teams out on that too. We had a morning team that worked on it when he had an afternoon team. So once the form stack was filled out from the student process, then it would go to one team, would go and verify the information, making sure they had their pre-assessment, which was something you have to do in order to take a TSI test. We made sure that they had the correct payments, or if a dual credit student, we made sure that they uploaded their information properly. And then once that form stack information was completely processed, then that team would email it to another team that actually was able to divide them out to where they needed to go. And at the time, our virtual proctors, even working 40 hours a week, they couldn't handle the load. So we ended up finding a company called Examity, which is a third-party vendor that we use, and directing and creating vouchers for some of the students that we couldn't handle. Because you're looking at a proctor can watch one student at a time, and it could be 4 to 5 hours, when normally on campus, we could watch 40 students in that one period of time. So we really had to manage who was going to our personal virtual proctors and who was going to Examity. So we tried to split that up just a little bit to take some of that pressure off. And so we worked on the emails, we worked on the form stack, and we had some of our part-time proctors actually stepped up, and they were able to monitor 2 students at a time virtually. We had one proctor that was willing to do 5 a.m. tests just in order to get that student scheduled. That was the only time they were able to take a test. So our employees in the testing center were just like stepping up to the plate. They were fantastic. I love bragging about them because they did a good job, even though we did have a period of time where we were struggling and trying to get that together. But once we had our flow and once we really got it done, the employees were just phenomenal in that process. And in order to make anything really work in any situation, you have to have a good system, because our director told us that she had no clue what to do in our testing center because she never was involved in it like she was until the pandemic happened and we all got shut down. So she really gives us a lot of credit because our employees really stepped up in the testing center. And what was fantastic about this is Montgomery was ahead of schedule. They were up there on top. We were getting tests done before some of the other campuses were actually trying to figure out how to get these tests done. So that helped a lot because of the employees we had and how we all just kind of band together to make sure we had what we needed, and then the students had what they needed. And it was great at the time, if the students didn't have a laptop, then they could borrow one from Lone Star. So that really helped a lot as well. So that brings me to my data of the day. Since this is a data camp, we have to present our data as well. So on here, on the very bottom, you will see a legend that shows the virtual in-house, our in-person, the vouchers we sent out, and then our virtual third parties that we did. So the ATI, HESI, and PSB all went to our third parties. We had to send them to the actual company that was administering them in order to get us to get them done virtually. We did not have any hand in proctoring those. And so the ATI is your physical therapy test. Your Avant is your placement test. Those all went to the company itself. And then the HESI test that went through the HESI program, and then they went through a third party called Proctoru. Our PSB testing, that all went through their own company as well. And then you can see how many TSI placement tests and the TSI dual credit high school tests that we did. We did a lot virtually with us, but we also did a lot with our vouchers as well. So as you can see, a lot of tests came through our doors during that time. And we are just thankful that our employees were able to step up to the plate and be able to figure out how these all worked. And I said this really fast, and I do apologize, but I'm already at the last slide here. But I want to thank you all for coming to my presentation. I know I probably spoke a little fast, and I do apologize, but that would give us more time to answer questions and everything. But a lot of the processes that we did during this, we actually still do today. We still do appointments in the testing center, which has relieved a lot of stress for not only the proctors, but the students to be able to have the appointments taken care of, and we know exactly what they're doing. And then through this process, our employees have really got to know each other better and have actually grown stronger as a group. And we were able to identify some of the issues that we were actually having in the testing center. Not issues so much, but because of not knowing how to administer this test. Because unfortunately, some of our tests are administered every year. So you have to kind of remind yourself a little bit about the process. And then some of our newer proctors that were coming in didn't even know how to do it at all. So it was nice to be able to share that information with everybody and be able to all feel like we know what we're doing. And this really helped the proctors be able to stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak. They were able to stand up and say, no, I'll take care of this. I'll take this off of somebody's plate that might have too much, and working 40 hours a week virtually, it was pretty crazy at one point. But thankfully, we were able to get so many students tested during that period of time that I'm really thankful for the team that we have here. We still use the form stack to fill out information as well, because we can verify everything. So by the time the student hits our door, we know that everything has been taken care of. So there are some processes that we have created in this system that I believe we'll be able to use even in the future when we open back up completely and everything is taken care of. So that leads me to, so I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions if you guys have any. If you think of a question afterwards, I've included my email address in here, so that way you can send me an email afterwards and I can try to answer it. So thank you so much for being here. Sharing my screen. So do we have any questions?
We do have one here that says, what were the additional costs for turning 9 part-time proctors into full-time proctors and for using the proctoring company?
The proctoring company's payment was all going through the third party. For Examity, the students were paying an extra $25 for that fee. And then for Avant, they were paying an extra $25. So instead of a $25 test for the Avant was going to a $50 test. And then the TSIs were paying $29 to us, and then the $25 for the Examity fee. We tried to have as many students as we could to us for so they didn't have to pay the extra fee, but some of the students, we just couldn't bear that load. For the additional cost, I'm not 100% certain on that part for the proctors, but thankfully we had enough budget because we weren't buying other tests. We were able to move that more into the part-time, and then we took some of the retired coordinator's payment and put that into our part-time budget. So we were able to cover that for at least 2 to 3 months. So that helped a lot. That answered your question. I have another question. Physical testing center is going to reopen during the summer or the fall. We are still going to be open as an appointment-based, kind of like what we have been doing. Our hours will be Monday through Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday are 9 to 4. Tuesday will be 9 to 6:30. We will be closed on Fridays, and on Saturday we will only be open twice for the months, 2 in June and 2 in July. No, we were not able to proctor any of the math. The question was, sorry, my screen is acting funky. The LSC math department requires proctor testing. Was your testing center able to proctor any of those? No, we were not able to proctor the math department's testing. The math department got together and were able to proctor some of their students on their own, but all of the instructional testing were being done by the teachers themselves. We were only able to proctor students with accommodations or students that might have missed a test in person. But during that process, we actually were doing no instructional testing whatsoever virtually. And we were using accommodations. We were able to, the team with the WebEx was able to figure out how to add a third-party person on there to read to a student for a TSI test with accommodations. So it was really awesome how they were able to figure that out and have 3 people on the screen and 1 read to the student while we still had a proctor on the line as well. Good questions. Any other questions that I might not have gotten to? You know how this will affect our reopening in the spring? Will you keep these services, etc.? I'm not sure how it'll affect yet on our reopening. I know we're still trying to figure all that out. But some of the services with the scheduling, I'm hoping we can keep with appointments only, because I do think it'll be less stress on the students, but also less stressful for the proctors as well. Because beforehand, before all the pandemic and everything happened, we would have students walk in and want to take a test, and we wouldn't have that test with us. So I think with us having the capability of having that appointment and having everything completed and ready to go the day before would be less stress, not only for us, but also for the students and for the teachers as well. So I'm hoping we keep the appointment base. But of course, when we reopen with appointments, we would have a lot more than we do now, because with our reopening, we only have 21 computers that we can use at a time. And sometimes those can get pretty full with the TSIs coming in. So how many students were you able to serve in person at any one time with social distancing requirements? So pretty much we had the 21 open computers, and then we have the 2 rooms that we would have for the disability students, and then we could handle about 2 or 3 paper tests. So we basically could have about 25 people in there, and that's it. And sometimes we were pretty full, because we did have some high schools coming in where they were using every single computer that we had open. So we had to do a little wiggle room, just a little bit. And then we did have, we were able to access one of the other rooms temporarily for one of the days we were completely full. See, I'll make sure I miss Any questions? All right, do I have any other questions that anybody would like to add? But it was a huge learning experience to do things virtual. And I do know that if we ever have to go back to virtual again, I hope not anytime soon, but if anything ever happens, we now have a system in play that I think it would be a lot smoother and a lot faster to be able to process than it used to be, for sure. All right, more questions? Talked about how successful faculty team members were in proctoring their own test. I don't know that answer to that. I do know some of the teachers were having a hard time trying to do things virtually with their own tests, but I do know that they were using some third-party proctorings. I think they used Proctoru, and there was another company that they used in order to proctor the test, and then they would do the lockdown browser, and they would record the students and monitor it that way. But I don't know how successful that was. Other questions? See any? I think I got everybody's questions. If I didn't, please resubmit it and I will look at it again for you guys. But I appreciate all of you coming and listening. Here's one. What is the scope of classes serve many for user respondents? That was the other one, respondents, but there are still multiple issues with security and integrity. Are you doing placement testing or also testing for classes? Yeah, we kind of covered that a little bit. We're hoping by the spring we'll be back to full capacity and be able to have the testing. And I do know that some of the faculty were having some issues with integrity. But unfortunately, with us being so limited in our social distancing and only having 21 computers, we could not handle the classroom testing as well. So I really appreciate the teachers that did step up and were able to do the monitoring of their own tests. So we were able to leave room for our placement testers so the students could come in and get tested in order to go and sign up for college. So that really helped take the burden off from us, because usually, especially with the walk-ins before all this had happened, we would see 30 to 50 people testing a day. And that's kind of hard to do with only 21 available computers. So I really appreciate them doing their own tests at the time. At this time, is the fall 2021 expect to have a 100% reopen? At this time, I don't have the answer to that. We're looking into it and see what they say that we need to be doing. But as of right now, we are still keeping the social distancing for the students' computers. So I don't know how that's going to affect the fall. They're still looking into that part. The old testing center setup pre-COVID worked better than the new system like Proctoru. We want you back. I appreciate that. Yes, Proctoru has had some issues, because I know some of the HESI with Proctoru has had a lot of issues, unfortunately. But we are working as hard as we can to get that back, for sure. Because yes, I know it can be frustrating for the students. Unfortunately, I do hear that part of it. I had about 3 people yesterday that were very unhappy with the third party. And I told them, if I could, I would easily just let you come in here and take the test. but at this moment, we just can't. We would love to, because that's what we're here for, to be able to test the students. But at this time, we do have to wait until everything is approved, processed, and then some of the payments we have to get corrected with some of the tests have gone up in pricing. So we do hope to come back to normal as soon as we can, whatever that normal looks like. But yes, we appreciate that a lot, and that's what we're here for. So we hope to get back to it soon, for sure. Did I miss any questions? Oh, you guys are very welcome. I appreciate y'all taking the time to come and listen to the testing center. Yeah. Any other questions? Everybody's dropping off, or not everybody, but some people are. Again, I just want to thank you for coming and listening to us. You're always welcome to come by and ask questions. You know where the testing center is. We are here, and hopefully we can get back to having more students. And we are looking forward to the new building. I am told we're going to have about 90 computers over there. So even if we did ever have to social distance, we will be able to have a lot more people than we do in this testing center. So we're excited. Every time I pass by the building, I was like, look, that's where we're going to be. So it's really cool to see the progress of that, for sure. So any other questions? All right, looks like we don't have any other questions, Dallas. I can see, did I miss any, Dallas?
I think you got them all.